Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet.
I think anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it doesn't go away overnight, actually, I would say. Some part of it, some true deep grokking or recognition of that your nature is of that seeing rather than of that doing, that can happen overnight potentially. But the tendency or the habit to pick things up as if you're doing it, and to feel like you're doing something, and therefore the suffering that comes when you haven't done it right or done it good enough, all of those, that kind of stuff, that absolutely can take time. I think I'm not unique in this analogy, but it's a good analogy, talking about the ceiling fan that's had its power cut and it still keeps going for a while afterwards. So those conditioned habits or responses that we have habituated to can continue for sure. And even now, years later, I sort of catch myself occasionally, like, caught up in something that feels very much like doing. And because doing still happens, it's just the ownership aspect of it that changes. But it's funny, what happens is there's this, even in amongst this sort of this sense of I'm doing, there's a deep, deep surrender and trust of the recognition that even that is appearing within me. So it changes the relationship to it. It comes about naturally. The loosening of that grip of I am doing as a mechanism of how life gets done, let's say. That loosens, and what's left in its place is just the recognition that life is happening. It's happening through me, it's happening to me, but it's just happening nonetheless. It's very threatening, but also, I'm going to butcher this, I know I am. There was a quote, as I always butcher quotes. It's this idea, in fact, I'm not even going to go to the quote. It's the idea that when we truly understand something, whether it be through experience or through the mind, even, it can come just through the mind, but when we truly know something, have knowledge of it, and understand what is being pointed to, then it loses it becomes so obvious that we can't help but go, this is how it is. And so it may be that there is something in you that hasn't quite followed that line of seeing all the way down to the bottom, and therefore the implications that has on your life. So it may just be that while you've seen it in the most part, or in some part, it hasn't filtered all the way down through all the cracks of your existence yet, be seen on every level. Yeah. And the thing is, you don't need to understand it just intellectually, you actually have to understand it experientially. And when you understand it truly experientially, it's obvious. It becomes so obvious that it's like, even if there is the play of doership happening, it's still obvious. So it's at that point, it just becomes, well, okay, this is here too then. By taking a look at your experience again and again and again, without any ideas of what that experience is, try and just even for a moment, and this is why meditation is very helpful, because it just for a moment clears the space of thought or of conception and allows you to just be with what is. And in that being with what is, you see it. You see, yes, that thought is arising spontaneously. I can't even control that. And there's the seed idea of non-doership there.
Okay.
So it's the repeated exposure to that brings clarity to the experience.
Okay.
And it can be that you have a wham, bam, wow, that's so clear. Or for most people, what happens is it's a softening and an opening of that again and again, a repeated exposure. For the most part, I think that's where most people find their experiential knowingness coming from. The mistrust and the doubt of that non-doership, it goes subtly over time when it's directly confirmed in experience again and again. So just, if I can say, what I would recommend is just to innocently look at life prior to assumptions. Be curious like a child. What is happening here? I think I'm doing? Well, let's have a look. What is actually happening? You're welcome.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.